Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving week to all of you. Just a reminder, per Governor Baker's order, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access this school committee meeting. Members of the public can access the meeting via live stream at youtube.com/DHSTV Media. In addition, the event will be rebroadcast on DCTV, channels 9 and 18 on the following days, Wednesday and Thursday at 5 p.m., Friday at 6 a.m., Saturday at 8 a.m., and Sunday at 2 p.m. The school committee reserves the right to implement additional remote participation procedures and will notify the public of these procedures as soon as practicable. For those of us in the room, just a reminder to please silence your cell phones, put them on vibrate. If we could have a roll call, please, Ms. Genther.
Chris Oliver.
Here.
Shannon Jenkins.
Here.
Kathleen Amaral.
Here.
John Nunes.
Yep.
Mary Waite.
Here.
And thank you very much. And for those of you, I'm not sure what everyone can see at home, but Dr. Jenkins is with us this evening via remote participation. So good evening, Dr. Jenkins, and we're happy that you could make it.
Hi, and thank you to Mr. Galashaw and Mr. Parati for their assistance in arranging this remote meeting while I am quarantining.
Happy to help. They are happy to help, as always. At this time, we have allotted, we typically allot a few minutes for anyone wishing to comment on any of tonight's agenda items. At this time, do we have any comments emailed to you, Ms. Genther?
I have not received any.
Okay, thank you very much. Just as a reminder for those of you at home, anyone wishing to comment on any of tonight's agenda items can do so by emailing our recording secretary, Kathleen Genthner, at dartmouthschools.org. We will circle back to this at the end of the meeting. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the regular session minutes of November 9th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Mrs. Amaral. On the motion, any discussion? Chair hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries
I'll
unanimously.
abstain, Mr. Chair. I was not present.
Okay, thank you very much. That's four for and
One abstain.
one abstention. I actually just skipped right over you, Dr. Jenkins, because all I see is a laptop in your seat.
That's okay. I'll make myself heard.
Thank you. At this time, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the executive session minutes of November 9th, 2020.
So moved, Mr. Chairman, with the stipulation they be held until the matter for which they were intended is complete.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So I have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Mrs. Waite. On the motion, any further discussion? Chair hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And one abstention.
And one abstention. Thank you very much. All right, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gifford for some school improvement plan presentations.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight, we're going to start off with our Director of Teaching and Learning, Tracy Oliveira, who will talk about some of the common things that the school district is doing, and then we'll move into having each of our principals come and present their school improvement plans. Of note tonight, once again, we're really happy to see that the principals have come together and they've worked hard together and collaborated to ensure that all of the initiatives are aligned and that we're continuing to row in the same direction. So we're very proud of them for doing that extra work this year. So, Ms. Oliveira?
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Gifford just said, I'm going to start out presenting the school year 2000-2021 elementary school improvement plans. As you know, all of our school improvement plans are built on top of our district improvement plan, and our district improvement plan has 3 strategic objectives: teaching and learning, access and equity, and community engagement. and each of those objectives has strategic initiatives and action steps. The first few slides in your presentation are just kind of a reminder of where those are and where we're coming from, so you can know the work that was built upon for the school improvement plan. So we'll be starting with, I think they told me I didn't have to move this. So the next slide is the elementary coordination slide. And we've worked very hard for the district strategic initiative of developing, sustaining a vertical alignment. And this meeting is truly coming full circle with that. This is our first time, as Dr. Gifford said, presenting a unified school improvement plan. Our schools are similar in our data that we possess. Each school has a different little culture and a different little flavor, if you may say, for the school that they present, but we all are kind of a similar. And as I said, this is the first year that the Unified School Improvement Plan. So what is we've been working on and fine-tuning over the last few years is just that alignment. And tonight this was all made possible with some of our action steps over the years. So we've created a CIA team, which was what we call Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and an L3 team, which we called our level literacy leaders. So what that means is each school from each grade level had one person on those teams. And we would get together once a month, and on the CIA team, we would talk about everything that was about math, science, social studies, and we would coordinate our efforts. As a second grade team, they would talk about what was happening in each level, and each school, and we'd be able to coordinate our efforts. They'd go back to the buildings, and they'd talk to their grade level peers or colleagues, and then that's how we started the coordination across the district. The L3 team was the level literacy leaders. They worked on everything, phonics, reading, and writing, and we did the same thing. We would meet about once a month together as a team, and then that grade 3 team, say one person from each level, would then meet. We'd talk about overarching topics, and they would head back to the building. And another little tweak we did in our work was with instructional coaches. They somewhat took on grade-specific, a grade-specific that they would work on. So one would kind of work with second grade team, and they would kind of coordinate across the district at all 3 of our elementary schools what was happening and kind of keep our curriculum moving that way. The next slide we had was, I always like to say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So in your presentation, you will see 4 slides. If you could keep going, Mr. Galashaw, we're a couple of behind. You'll see a slide with 4 pictures. And I always want to say, before we get into our teaching and learning action steps of our school improvement plan, that the look and feel of what we're doing this year is very, very different. And lots of conversations we had before our kids came back to school was we didn't want to kind of lose the good work that we've done up until this time. As the middle school talked about last meeting and this week, we've made some adjustments in our curriculum and our teaching and learning so that we were kind of project-based. We were giving kids a lot of opportunities for voice and choice, and we really didn't want to lose that. So as you can see, the picture on the left-hand side with the little horses, which I think is absolutely adorable, but it just hammers home the fact that we are teaching our littlest learners in a socially distant atmosphere. So we have kids kind of sitting in places, and all of our curriculum is really built, like I said, around those project-based units and project-based lessons and getting together. So how does that look and feel differently? We have the picture up above in the left-hand side was our virtual academy, and I think it looks like everything is happening normal, but what you don't see off picture is she's actually talking to a screen like down here in this corner. So she's actually talking to a bunch of kids scattered across the town of Dartmouth in their living rooms or in their kitchens, and she's having a math lesson up on the board, and they're talking just like they were in front of her. So part of the work that we did in our strategic and our school improvement plans was how do we keep that good instruction going forward in this time of hybrid remote learning and half the kids in class. So the next slide, we're going to talk about teaching and learning. And so one thing what we wanted to definitely keep going this year was implementing of our ST Math in grades 3 and 5. As you know, last year we won a grant and we implemented ST Math in grades K1 and 2. For those, just a reminder, ST Math, the ST is spatial temporal, so it means we're really teaching students how to conceptualize math in their brains. How can they move things? How can they visualize things? So we start introducing kids to that. All the concepts and skills that are being taught at that grade level are introduced first through ST Math. It's Gigi. If you haven't heard of Gigi or seen Gigi on our Facebook or out in our schools, she is the mascot for ST Math. And they play games trying to get her across the screen to solve puzzles. The ST Math has no language in it whatsoever. So kids have to figure out what they're doing and try to solve problems. And it's kind of funny because I think adults struggle with it. Adults can't help kids. We tell kids they need to play the grade, they need to solve the problem, because you have no instructions whatsoever. You just have to figure out what to do. And then the kind of the power behind it is kids get that conceptual knowledge of that skill, and then when it comes up in our scope and sequence, the teachers attach the academic vocabulary to it. So it could not be a standalone program. The kids learn the conceptual skills through the ST Math and through projects that we're doing at home or in the classroom. And then when it comes up, like I said, teachers then attach the academic language, and we take them from the conceptual to the abstract in math. In our ELA, also in math, we've kind of found that we need to do so a little bit more with our fluency across all 3 schools. So our math coaches and some of our teacher teams that I talked about earlier took our fluency standards and really dug into what do kids need to know at the end of each grade level. And they put together a lot of project-based games, a lot of practicing, so that kids can really understand the putting numbers together and breaking numbers apart. And I think one of the best analogies is we want kids to understand what addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division means. Just like we know everyone can memorize the Pledge of Allegiance, it doesn't really mean they understand what it means. So when we talk about fluency, we're not really talking about how fast they can go, but how well do they understand what putting numbers together and taking numbers apart mean. So we've done some work on that, and we broke that up into grade level standards. For our ELA, this is our final year of our balanced literacy program that we've been working on for about 5 years now. We're introducing phonics grade 2, and even in the pandemic, we really said we didn't want to hold that off a year. We trained our teachers before the pandemic hit, so we were ready to go. So we said, let's just go ahead and do that. And a missing component of our ELA instruction was vocabulary instruction. So it wasn't real strong in our units of study, and we wanted to really ramp that up. We feel it's an important piece. So once again, just by luck, our teacher team last year worked on going through our read-alouds. So all of the classrooms have the same read-aloud that they're doing in the units of study. They pulled out Tier 2 vocabulary words, so real strong vocabulary words. We used Isabel Beck's vocabulary strategies and made vocabulary cards for all of the classrooms so they can introduce, and we kind of built our own vocabulary scope and sequence and curriculum based on our units of studies and our read-alouds. So we were able in September to get that material out to teachers, and now we're working on kind of implementing that so that kids can see the words, use them as they speak, and also use them as they write. One kind of silver lining in this pandemic is our units of study for ELA come from Teachers College of Columbia University, and they put out videos. So we were able to purchase the videos and use the videos in our instruction. So in both reading, writing, and phonics, we have taped lessons from the professors at Columbia University or the curriculum developers so that our students can watch them in class. They can go home. They're available for parents to see. They're available for kids to use when they're at home working on things. They're also available for teachers on the grade level above or below to kind of look at. What we've kind of been working on is trying to get that consistent language and consistent strategies. So we really are kind of, I want to say, hitting the pavement hard with the videos and trying to access them as much as we can and get them into kids' hands. And teachers, it kind of also took something off the teachers' plate that they would have to do for right now, but it was a nice way that we kept the language going. That's where we're kind of going right now, with the biggest piece really being that we're monitoring and updating our scope and sequence. So as I started the presentation, we really don't want to stop any of the good work that we were doing. So what does that look like? So we come together, just as the middle school was saying, periodically with the coaches, and we monitor where teachers are, what supports teachers will need going forward. So if they're coming up to a difficult topic, what does that look like in this, pandemic teaching that we're having? What supports do teachers need? What do we need to tweak? And we kind of move forward. So a lot of our school improvement plan is really built on just keeping that moving during this time. Our next initiative is access and equity, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Porter and Mr. Granfield are going to be presenting that, and I think Mr. Granfield is first. I don't know if you want to do questions now or questions at the end, or...
I think we can take them at the end.
All right, so perfect. So I'm going to turn over the mic to Mr. Granfield from Quinn School.
Thank you very much, Mrs.
Thank you.
Oliveira.
Good evening.
Good
Thank
evening,
you all
Mr.
for this
Granfield.
opportunity to present tonight. The portion that I am presenting on is access and equity. When we were working on this by school at first and then talking about this presentation, we had created a Google Doc to put in all of what we're doing at each school so that we could kind of align it and be ready to present. So what we've done tonight, or at least what I've done, is taken all 4 schools and kind of merged them into one, because for this specific initiative, it was almost identical for what each school is doing. So under access and equity, specifically about supporting the use of technology for all staff and students to access the curriculum in both full and remote hybrid learning. As the 4 administrators worked on this piece of this document, it became abundantly clear that the hard work and effort everyone was putting towards technology looks extremely similar throughout the elementary level. In particular, for this specific initiative, we are so fortunate to have instructional technology coaches here in Dartmouth. They have been vital in supporting teachers during both remote and hybrid learning. When we started this school year, in the remote learning phase, instructional technology specialists played an important role in helping teachers set up classrooms to look like what we were joking around calling command centers. These command centers allowed students at home to feel as though they were right there in their classrooms. They were able to see peers, had full day access to their teachers, participated in special areas, and many teachers used this opportunity to create a classroom community and build rapport with their students and families. As we shifted to the hybrid model, technology specialists continue to support teachers daily with both in-person technological needs as well as the remote learning school day demands. Across the elementary schools, ITS and academic coaches have been attending weekly grade level common planning times as a means of support. There has also been ongoing professional development at each school, which has included topics such as Google Classroom, GoGuardian, curriculum websites and resources, as well as other academic platforms. In closing, the ongoing collaboration with all staff to streamline the day in the life of hybrid elementary student has provided the opportunity for access and equity at the elementary level. Thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Porter is going to continue with the second bullet point of access and equity.
Thank you, Mr. Granfield.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Granfield. And the next initiative under Access and Equity is to design a broad spectrum of purposeful experiences to meet the needs of diverse populations in all curriculum and social emotional areas. We are all very sensitive to the fact that we want to make sure that all of our students have equal access during this era of COVID-19. As my colleague Katie Paveo mentioned, all elementary staff have the mindset of whatever needs to be done will be done to keep kids engaged. So in September, our teachers participated in 2 weeks of intensive professional development, and in that short time, they have become masters of virtual differentiated instruction. Through a variety of software, through different media platforms, they are reaching students who are sitting in front of them, but they are also reaching those students who are learning from home. However, we need to be keenly aware that we, like all communities in Massachusetts, we have diverse student populations. And we need to make sure that some of those unique conditions do not turn into barriers for our students as it relates to learning at home. Some are at home learning, but others are at a daycare, at a grandparent's house, being supervised by older siblings, and we need to be mindful of those different conditions. So with that in mind, we are using a mix of technology and paper-based resources to maximize student engagement. Staff are using Google Classrooms to support students via online work. Staff are checking in with their at-home learners daily, in some cases several times a day, to make sure students are engaged. This is done through both the Google Classroom and GoGuardian. Classroom teachers have developed unique agendas for each cohort of students to provide a solid structure for at-home learning, including checklists to monitor student engagement. Administrators are meeting with staff during PLC times to identify students and families who are struggling with at-home learning. We have developed protocols so staff can reach out to students and families, especially students who are quarantining, to assist with instruction. Beyond academics, social and emotional concerns and health concerns are sometimes barriers as well to student learning. Our school nurses have become the unsung heroes of all our buildings during this COVID-19 crisis. Our social workers, our school psychologists, they are continuing to meet with their students on their caseloads in school and both remotely, and have worked with students and families on managing those unique circumstances as it relates to COVID-19. All of our schools are currently supporting many families with gift cards during the Thanksgiving holiday. These cards have come through the generosity of local churches, organizations, our PTOs, and family and staff donations. PBIS, our plan for positive school learning environment, is still up and running and has been adapted to meet our current conditions. We are still focusing on kindness and safety expectations for all students and the importance of taking care of others. We are still reinforcing positive behavior with tangible reinforcements. Cushman, for example, is still doing their kindness coins, and the other schools have adapted their traditions to meet safety guidelines as well. And with that, I will now ask Dr. Dale to talk about community engagement.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Very nice to meet you all.
Yeah, I think this is
In person.
our first formal introduction. Right.
So tonight I'm speaking for my colleagues and myself with regards to how we are capitalizing on our technology platforms to keep our community informed of school topics and happenings. And there's a lot of similarities between all of us, but there's some differences as well. The Potter School keeps their community informed through the Aspen email platform, and they also have the Potter Facebook and the Potter YouTube channel. They use the Remind app and the Google Classroom to post assignments and to keep everybody apprised of the happenings at their school. There's also been an increased usage of the Google Drive amongst the teachers, families, and staff in sharing information. At the DeMello School, every Friday they send out the electronic backpack, and again, it's an informative document for families. And they include information with regards to meal distribution, nursing updates, school-wide initiatives, general reminders about what's going on. They too have a Facebook and a Twitter feed. Most teachers at the DeMello School do use the Remind app to send out reminders to their families. And also they can give direct messages to the families about their children. Mrs. Paveo also records the morning announcements each day, which gets posted to the classrooms for students in school and at home to participate in. At the Quinn School, Quinn uses multiple media platforms as well. They have the Quinn homepage and the PTO Facebook page. There are two resources that the families can access. They also have their teachers using the Remind app and the Google Classroom to keep updates fresh, along with forums provided such as the Backpack Weekly documentation and reminders for parents through the monthly Quotable Quinn newsletter that also highlights and provides reminders. At the Cushman School, I know this is about technology. We do use technology, but we also have some old school things going on, as we all do, with plenty of phone calls. And we also have some communication books that are still going to the families. We also use Remind and the Google Classroom, and we use email a lot. We have a weekly correspondence called the Peak of the Week that goes out through the Blackboard platform, and I'm using a app called S'more, which kind of makes your newsletter look a little prettier. And in my S'more Peak of the Week, we also have correspondence and newsletters attached from the school nurse or the family outreach social worker or the reading specialist. So the kindergarten teachers are enjoying using the Google Classroom, but in preschool we're using more of just emails with our families. That's about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about the action step of networking with community partners in creative ways in which learning experiences can be brought virtually to our students and staff. So we know that obviously COVID has put a lot of restrictions on our ability to go places or to have people come into our buildings. And so it was incumbent on us to think a little bit outside the box about how we could continue some of the programs that we've had in the past and still enrich our students' education. So as is the case with what my colleagues have said, we have some similarities across the buildings. One of the things that we look forward to every year is firefighter Anthony Puente coming in to talk to the kids about fire safety. We know that obviously in this time our emphasis really has shifted more towards health and safety, but it's important to us to still talk to the kids about fire safety. And he was wonderful and figured out a way to zoom into all of our classrooms and still do his presentation in the way that only firefighter Puente can do. He has had the trucks behind him, and it was great. He was able to get into every single classroom and connect with the kids. The Lloyd Center traditionally comes into our third grade classrooms to do something called Feathery Focus. And they've figured out a way to work with our students online this year. So our kids on their at-home learning day will be able to access the Lloyd Center curriculum through Feathery Focus and still maintain that connection with them. We have lots of virtual field trips that have been taking place or are in the process of taking place. So we can't physically go to visit some of the places that we may have gone to, but we're trying to figure out ways to bring those experiences into the classrooms. I'll just say we've worked at DeMello School, and I know some of the other schools have worked with the New Bedford Symphony Orchestra in the past couple of years to do, they do a school to theater connection where they come into the school and they do some work with members of the symphony orchestra, and then our kids would go and see a performance. So this year they're doing something called Birds of Flight, and it is the connection between the flight of birds and classical music. And they've figured out a way to do all of that virtually so that our students can still have that experience of the symphony orchestra. Our staff meetings, so our professional development, so not just learning for our students, but learning for our staff has also continued, and we've also been able to continue to have people come in and work with our staff, not physically, but virtually. At the DeMello School, we are very excited to have worked with the Children's Advocacy Center already this year. We have a representative from the Jesse Safe and Supportive Schools who's going to be doing some training with our staff, and one of our parents who is a consultant on diversity in the schools, and he's going to do a 3-part session with our teachers on diversity in the schools. Across in the other schools, it's the same thing. We're having our virtual PTO meetings. We're still maintaining our connection with our families in that way. The other thing that we're excited about at my school, I'll just kind of talk about, we're doing author visits. So it's an opportunity for our kids to listen to authors come in virtually. Our first and second graders are going to meet Sadai Faruqi, who wrote the book Meet Yasmin. So we actually had the diversity libraries that we purchased to be part of our classroom libraries. She wrote a book called Meet Yasmin, and that's a part of our diversity library. And she's gonna come into our first and second grade classrooms and talk to them about becoming an author. Our third graders got to meet with, or are going to be meeting with, Josh Funk, who writes Fractured Fairy Tales and other very silly stories. And our fourth and fifth graders have already met with Julie Berry, who is a New York Times best-selling author. She just wrote a book called Wishes and Wellingtons, which is a fantasy upper grade book. So we've really it's really been incumbent on us to kind of think outside the box on the ways that we can still engage our students. That we know that for a lot of our kids, this is the stuff that makes them want to come to school. This is the stuff that keeps them connected. This is the stuff that keeps them motivated. And my colleagues have all done such a great job trying to continue that work and make sure that we're still connected to the community. And on the professional side of things, also Cushman is having a lot of their EI meetings with the Schwartz Center and the Kennedy Donovan Center. They have parents convening virtually. It's really it's been, I think, remarkable to watch how people have seen the hurdles and overcome the hurdles and then continue to be able to do some of the great work that we do with the community members. So I think at this time, I am going to turn it back to Tracy Oliveira, but you can have any questions for any of us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Paveo.
Hello again. I don't know if you had any questions for us, or if you just wanted to move on to, I know they wanted some updates on the hybrid learning, and we were gonna have the schools update again on how that's going.
Yeah, we can, I'll turn it over to my colleagues right now if you want, for any comments or questions for the school improvement plans. Anyone want to go first? Mr. Nunes?
Sure, thank you.
I know.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I have to agree with everyone. Hats off to the IT personnel for all the work that they've done, you know, getting out, you know, all the Chromebooks and everybody trying to get on. I know when we first went, you know, remote and all the other good things, that there were issues, and, you know, they've worked through them. Quick question that I have is, do we have anyone who does not have internet access? Which I know is, have we run into that at all, or how are we handling that?
So we actually wrote a grant, and we were able to purchase hotspots for anyone within the district that that does not have internet access. So I'm pretty sure most of them have been given out. 25 have been given out. I know I had two that were given out today. So everyone does have access one way or the other. We were able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Just in general, you know, how has the communication been with the parents, with the students? I mean, are you finding some students that aren't logging in, or they log in and all of a sudden they're not there, type of deal? How are those situations being handled?
So I can talk for what I know, and for the virtual academy. So we try to touch base with at the virtual school, and when kids don't show up, we call home and say, where are you? Where are you going? We've had a few cases where kids are in with Go Guardian. We can see where kids are, and they might pop into a site that is a PBI essay, but it's not what we're doing. And the teachers say, hey, you should be in school right now. Come on over. So we get kids pulling into school. I can talk for some of the schools maybe, and I'll let them pull up, that we have all hands on deck. We call families that are not participating. We get them joining, coming in.
Yeah.
I think Katie Paveo said it's all hands on deck, and the elementary teachers, or all teachers, will do anything to get kids what they need to be successful in school.
Yeah.
And that's what we're finding. It's all hands on deck, and everyone's participating and trying to, you know, get kids what they need and families what they need to be successful in this kind of crazy time.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate everyone's work on this with, you know, I mean, this is, yeah, it's an entirely different situation that none of us have ever gone up against, but I appreciate everybody's work in, you know, trying to make sure our students are being educated. So thank you very much for that. I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Nunes.
You know, I don't really have much to say except for, you know, thank you. It's been an incredible hurdle, what you guys have done. It's unbelievable. So, you know, it's exciting to see that, you know, hear that, you know, fun things are still happening in the schools, you know, that kids are still excited and are, you know, being connected. I just think, you know, I gotta get, you know, hands off to everyone that's working so hard and still being creative and still, you know, trying to really think outside the box ways to engage these kids. So, yeah, great job. Thank you.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add, to be honest, but I just had a question, though, just neither here nor there. I just think it's wonderful. But the videos from Columbia University that were they available is this something that happened due to the pandemic?
Yes.
Okay.
So they went out and they taped them all, they put them all together, and they actually, to give them kudos, not that they have enough money, but they sold them at a very reasonable price
Yeah.
for schools to be able to access during this time.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I've been sort of part of some focus groups with them where they're reaching out to families as well to really hear the impact and the reality of what's happening with remote and hybrid learning. So I was curious. But yeah, just kudos to everyone. You know, I love being on the school committee and I love serving my community. I have to be honest and say it's not fun at the moment, you know, to hear all the criticism, and I'm sure you hear all that as well. But you're doing a really good job. Your staff's doing an amazing job, just riding that wave, and all hands on deck is really a polite way of I'm sure describing the reality of what all of you have to do at every given moment, probably 24 hours a day. So I hope that you're getting some rest and being good to yourselves and knowing that you're doing the best that you can. I try to tell myself that as well, but this too shall pass, and tomorrow's another day. So just thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Amaral. I'm just going to echo everything that my colleagues have said. You know, I want to thank you all for coming out here tonight on things. Oh, I'm sorry. And here I go again, skipping over my colleague, Dr. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins?
That's all right. I don't really have much to add, except I think there's some level of strangeness over building school improvement plans during a pandemic. In a normal year, a school improvement plan is like fixing the plane while you're flying it. I think this year doing a school improvement plan is like moving from a propeller plane to a rocket ship while you're flying it. So I just really appreciate all of the effort and work that you all have put into this, because I know how difficult your jobs are. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get used to this tonight. It may take me, may take me a few times. I just have a couple of things highlighted here. One of the things, it seems like it was a seemingly impossible task to put this together. I know, like I said before, you have done so much in such a short period of time. So thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. Thank you to your staff. I know that, you put this together, you presented here this evening. I know that some of you were probably dealing with COVID cases, dealing with mental health issues with students, with staff, dealing with parents, dealing with, the list can go on and on. Just a couple of other quick points. I think we have taken technology in this district and across the state, across the country, to a whole new level. Thank you to our technology coaches, to Mr. Galashaw, to our administrators for really pushing the envelope on this. I think back it was in July or August where this committee said that if we're going to go remote or hybrid, we need to make sure that it's going to be a lot more robust than it was, obviously, in the springtime. And I think that is exactly what you and your staff did. So thank you all. I wish you nothing but a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope everyone gets some rest.
Thank you. Thank you.
Were you, Mrs. Oliveira, were you going to touch base on the hybrid?
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
I was just gonna,
Sneaking back out. I know, I was like, hey. You're escaping those questions. The schools had actually prepared something to talk about what they were doing within their buildings. So
Okay.
I will turn it over to Mr. Paul.
That's okay.
Please have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought you said happy Thanksgiving.
I know, I was like, this is Chris.
Big tease.
I guess I set the tone on that.
Yeah, Mr. Oliver, that's all right. I think I hate to use the word silver lining in COVID because that just seems like an oxymoron to me. But a good thing is that the four of us have become a very close team because of that. And I think that's evident in the work that we did collectively on the school improvement plan. So these are the things that we all talked about collectively that we just wanted to highlight in our hybrid opening. In October or in September as well too, as we were getting ready for students to come back into school, we did a lot of orientation activities, either through PowerPoints, guides, or videos to kind of show the kids and the families what a classroom would look like 6 feet apart, what the hallways would look like. We all created guides for the families to show them how all our protocols have been redeveloped to meet the safety standards. But even earlier than that, I mean, all of us can tell you, we've been talking all summer long, and not just among the four of us. We were doing regular staff Zooms, and those were all voluntary. And we had staff showing up once, twice a week to kind of get the latest information as the planning began to happen. All of our schools kind of had a hybrid planning team because, as you can imagine, we had to take every protocol that we had and we had to redevelop it to meet the standards. We have to put protocols in place, and we have, because we have many students now who, because they have to quarantine, have to have extended absences, and we're trying to make sure that they're staying up on their work and on the instruction as well. We've had to take our recess and our lunch procedures and change them all. So, for example, all our lunches are in the classroom. There's a very definitive procedure on how a child takes their mask off, eats their lunch. will then take care of their trash, wash their hands, and the mask has to go back on, and it's very controlled. There is no talking during lunch. Usually the teacher will have like a video on the smart board because, again, we're very sensitive that we want to make sure when their masks are off, that's the highest point where we're following those safety guidelines. Our recess really almost looks like, as one monitor said to me, almost like a camp counselor kind of experience. They clean their hands before they go outside. They usually have some sort of mask break that's very much socially distanced. But then there's like an activity for the kids that is very structured. It's not just free play anymore because we have to make sure that they're maintaining that social distance and keeping their masks on. But a big thing has been the flexibility of our staff. As you can imagine, we had staff that were unable for some very legitimate reasons not to be able to start the school year. So we've had teachers filling in areas that they don't normally do. We've had teachers who have to fill in for recess, have to fill in for lunch. We have some of our social workers actually covering health classes, and they're doing this above and beyond. We have teachers who are giving up their prep times because we don't have a specialist on time, and they're fine with it. Or if we have to pull the specialist in the middle of the day to cover a class. So the teachers, along with our nurses, are really the unsung heroes here. Our social workers, because we have to remember, we're so focused on the health and safety as we should be, but we have to think of the social, emotional, and mental health of our students. When we have to quarantine a class, how does that make a child feel? So our social workers are talking to the kids. What does it mean to be safe? What does it mean to quarantine? What does it mean to isolate? And also working with families as well. We have lots of outside learning, which means lots of winter jackets all the time, because normally this time of year, you wouldn't see kids outside as much, and kids are outside all the time now, because that's probably really the safest place to be. The district was very kind to purchase for us totes and pouches, so when students are in one cohort, they don't leave any stuff in their desks because all that has to be sanitized at night. The stuff goes into their own individualized tote, it goes on a shelf, so when they come back 2 days later, they get their tote and they bring it over to their desk. They also have pouches, so when they leave to go home on a Monday, anything that they would need for their at-home learning day is in their pouch, including the Chromebook, which we have asked comes back and forth charged to school every single day. That is a challenge at times, but. Our bathrooms, we have a variety of different issues at our buildings. Some of us are fortunate that some of our classrooms do have bathrooms in the room, but some of us don't. So we've had to close off stalls, limit certain grade levels to certain bathrooms, and including sink, along with a lot of signage in there as well to make sure kids are socially distanced. Our custodial hours have been increased to cover surface cleaning during the day. Our pre-K, especially over the Cushman School, they're able to clean some of their structures so kids at recess can use that. And visuals are all throughout the building, especially for our youngest kids with pictures, so they'll know what it means to wait, to sit. There's footprints around, so they're able to follow that protocol as well. We've limited the amount of time students spend in the hallways. So, for example, we usually get one bus off at a time in the morning, so there's less kids in the hallway going in the same direction. But we also utilize the outside exits of the building as much as possible to have students get to where they need to go. I think the biggest help we've had this year was the hybrid model that was adopted by having the cohorts. It varies from building to building, but as my colleagues will tell you, we became handymen this summer walking around with tape measures. For example, in our building, the most we can have in a classroom is 12 students, so we can maintain that 6 feet of social distancing. So that's been a big help. It can range as low as 7 to sometimes up to just 12 kids in a classroom space. And the teachers have been real creative. All the kids are at their desks, and initially we all thought, that's going to look very sterile. It's not going to look like an elementary classroom. But some of our teachers have created visuals for the fronts of the desks. Other teachers have also had mats that are right next to the desk, or hula hoops, again, to promote that social distancing at all time. The most special areas are done in the classroom. In some cases, they may be done in gym, or again, some of them are still being done outside. And as I said before, the staff has really gone above and beyond. We're just the faces here tonight. They are the true heroes of making this work. And we have to recognize this is all new to them. And it's almost like the principle of Goldilocks. For some families, they're going to say it's not enough. For some families, it's going to say it's too much. We are trying to strive for what's just right, and that's always our goal. And lastly, our students have been amazing. I think Justine and I can tell you we had our youngest preschoolers come in first, and there was a real concern that 3- and 4-year-olds would not be able to keep the mask on. They did it from day one. So our students, again, have done a great job of that. So that, I think, encapsulates all of our hybrid model this year.
I think so. Mrs. Waite?
Yeah, so first, again, thank you. I'm sorry, getting ready to go. But, you know, I do have a couple questions, you know, just kind of thinking, and I was waiting for after the hybrid too, because, you know, again, we're hearing, again, so much. We know the staff is working so hard. And so, you know, as we think about this, the social emotional welfare of our students, but also our staff is really important. So as administrators, how are you, you know, supporting the staff? I mean, again, I know professional development, but is there anything to talk about, like the heightened stress, you know, you know, some kind of workshops or like resources that staff have just, you know, to talk through, you know, challenges that they're having, you know, to support them, because it's stressful to have these, you know, be in the middle of this as an educator, I can only imagine, so.
Well, there have been some through DESE, some webinars that we've been able to attend to take care of the social well-being of staff. But I think all of us will tell you, it's just us being there, not just us and our social workers available to staff. It's that open door policy. It's when you have to talk to staff about maybe having to quarantine. How are you taking that news? What do you need right now to help you get through that? I think it's just through a lot of communication and genuine caring for them and how we can support them.
Okay, and that's great. And my other question is kind of in the similar, you know, my colleague, Ms. Amaral had mentioned before, when we talk about, you know, social distancing, what we really have been talking about is physical distancing. And we know in this, you know, one of the difficult realities is that kids are separate. They're not able to do the group work. That, you know, is such, you know, again, project-based learning is such a keystone for the elementary curriculum, especially for the curriculum of K through 12. So how are you promoting those social relationships when students are physically divided? Because I know it's got to be hard. I mean, it's hard. You know, I see it with my own children.
Well, in our social, with our social workers, we're still doing our second step lessons. Our social workers are still going in teaching that. We are still doing some group work, but again, focused on, as Mrs. Amaral said, the physical distancing to get that work done. So when they have to do that, those kids are 6 feet apart. In some cases, we have plexiglass shields that we have to use. And even in other cases, with some kids that are physically in the building, we've actually seen some groups where they've actually still doing it on the computer so they can really hear the kids well, because the masks are a challenge to hear people.
Right.
So through a lot of creative ways, we're still doing that important work of social skills groups and that work with kids.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Anybody else?
Anyone else?
I'll just like a quick comment that just asking my own daughter and around what you mentioned around recess and the structured activities. She's loving them, and she's an extremely social kid, but I can imagine that, you know, I hate using the phrase, but that silver lining. Have you seen any examples or any I'm thinking that might be beneficial for some of those kids who have that anxiety around going out to recess, that now you've got a smaller cohort, you're kind of expecting this planned activity where you don't have to be chosen or miss out or be left out during that time. Even myself, I remember being young and having that like insecurity around, am I going to go to the cafeteria too late? Where am I going to sit? Those sorts of things. So I can imagine that there's a silver lining around that with some of those kids who have anxiety around that. Have you seen that? Or
Well, absolutely. I think for anxious kids anyhow, the general rule of thumb is to give them as much structure as possible. And clearly this year, we've given more structure than ever before. I mean, there's a protocol just to stand. I mean, we have to know how to do that. So definitely at recess, it's that same thing as well. So I agree with you. I think for those anxious kids, it's very much pre-planned what they're going to do. And I do want to say, if a child didn't want to participate in that structured activity, they don't have to. They would have some options to be able to sit out. That being said, the flip side, I mean, there's a lot of importance to free play and learning how to make choices and make decisions like that too. So we're trying to balance how we do that as well, because there's a lot of learning in anxious moments and how to make decisions. So again, we're still working on that as well. So
great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Amaral. 2 questions, Mr. Porter. One being, how are the students doing? You know, I hear from different questions, parents asking, you know, are the students really enjoying their time in school? What do you see, and this is for any of you, what do you see in the classrooms and in your buildings as far as the students that are coming in? Are they having a good, you know, as best as they can experience?
go ahead, Katie. Yeah.
I talk as a parent as well as a,
Yeah,
as a, so
sure.
I'm going to say both and wear both hats on that. You're going to make me yell into the microphone. Thanks, Rick. So I think, you know, I know my own children very much look forward to their in-school day. They love to be in school. They like the routine about school. They like, there's a comfort and normalcy, I think, that goes with going to school. And I think to my colleague's point, we've done a lot of work to try to bring the things that they know about school to school. So we're still doing PBIS. We're still recognizing kids, we're still figuring out ways to have kids want to be there. I very much see kids enjoying their time in school. To some of the questions you were asking before, I still, we are still seeing kids play math games. We're figuring out how to do that from a distance, right? So we're still trying to incorporate a lot of that project-based and that fun stuff that kids like about being in school into their in-school day. Now, that being said, I'm also finding kids who like their at-home day and like that kind of day in between and like that schedule. I think there's comfort in knowing that if they go home and are stuck, they're going to see their teacher the very next day. That's the benefit of that kind of every other day piece, that we know if our kids are struggling, they're going to come back and we're going to be able to kind of fix that. But I will say, I think the first week when they came in, it was as quiet as I've ever heard our building be. I think the kids all had a moment to adjust. We saw sleepy faces that hadn't been awake that early in a long time. We saw kids who, my own children were like, oh, I gotta get dressed every day and brush my hair and get out of the house. So I think there was some readjusting to scheduling, but by and large, I think we see happy kids in a familiar setting. And like I said, there's a normalcy to going to school that has brought, I think, a sense of this is gonna be okay back to a lot of our kids.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then my next question can be for you or anyone else. How are we dealing with, is it school specific or is it across the district with mask breaks? How are the schools, individual schools, how are we
Want me to keep going?
handling mask breaks? I'm just curious.
So I'll keep going. So we all have a minimum of 2 per day that kids are engaging in, but most classrooms have far more than that. So we've also gotten creative beyond just our mask breaks at lunch and at recess at figuring out ways to carve out a space into the room for if a child needs a mask break. And we've kind of built that into our rituals and routines. And all the classrooms that I go into, they have, depending on the layout of the building, like in our school, we kind of have that alcove between 2 classrooms. A lot of our teachers have made that a designated mask break space, where if kids need a moment, they can go back there. They're still within earshot of instruction. They're not missing anything, but they can go back there. So much of what we've done, and Mr. Porter alluded to it, is about building rituals and routines. And when we have strong rituals and routines, it doesn't disrupt the learning. The kids know that they've just established that as a routine. They can go to the mask break spot. A lot of our classrooms, if kids are working independently within their 6 feet and they need a minute, they can pull their mask down, take their minute to kind of if they're reading and they're not speaking, that's fine. It's just about building those safe rituals and routines, adhering to those safety protocols as we've been doing, but giving kids what they need in that moment. It's also teaching kids about self-advocacy. I think that there's when we talk about some of those silver linings, I've seen kids learn to self-advocate in a way that maybe they didn't before because there was no need to say, I really need a break right now. But we've taught kids about, this is hard. It's hard to be in a mask all day, and it's hard for teachers too. Our teachers may say, boys and girls, I'm gonna be quiet for a minute because it's hard for me to keep talking in this mask. So we've really been working with our kids on that self-advocacy piece of it as well. As Mr. Porter said, we are outside as much as we can be. As long as it's not thundering and lightning and raining like it was today, you'll see our classes outside doing read-alouds, taking, again, another mask break that they can take down those masks and have a moment to get some fresh air.
Okay. No, I think that explains it really well.
Yeah, that's good, thanks.
I do have one more question. I'll just toss it out there. Challenges. What do you see as your biggest challenge, and how can we as a school committee, assist you or try to help you out with any of these challenges?
I think it's just to be what you already are doing. You need to be supportive of the decisions that the central office is making and what we're making. And I think what we're trying to stress to all our staff and all our families, not one situation is like another. And I think sometimes you're going to hear things in the community saying, they went this way one day, but why did they do this way the other day? And I think we just have to recognize that in normal times, classrooms are different, children are different, and we have to approach things differently based on the situation. It's even more so right now. So I think continuing to do the things that you're doing, there's been a lot of preparation, there's been a lot of planning to get to these moments and stuff like that. So continuing to support the central office and support the work that we're doing, for me, that would be the most important thing, because we're discovering challenges that we didn't even know were challenges before.
Sure.
And we just would like to have that continued support.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. And Dr. Jenkins, I didn't want to forget about you.
No, I'm good. It's a little difficult to do the Q&A format, and I think you guys have all covered it. So I just want to say to everyone, thank you for their hard work. I know this is a very challenging time to supervise and to teach, and I'm appreciative of all the work that everyone's doing.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, and thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Yes.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Now we're good?
That's good. Good question.
Next up,
Mr.
under
Chairman?
old business.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do we need to make a motion to approve the?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's fine. I make a motion that we approve the school improvement plans for Quinn, Potter, DeMello, and Cushman schools as presented.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Mrs. Waite. On the motion, any other discussion? Chair hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Next up on tonight's agenda, under old business, update on the Equality and Diversity Committee. It's been some time. I think the last time it was on the agenda was the end of August, so talking with Dr. Gifford, felt it was important just to bring this back around and get it on the agenda, just to touch base on a couple of things about it. So what my thought with this agenda item tonight was, we have to keep in mind that, and we're continuing, as we know as a committee, we continue to get emails. This is a hot topic around the Dartmouth Indian. But we have to remember that this is not just simply about the Dartmouth Indian.
Exactly.
This is about the diversity and inequality in the Dartmouth Public Schools. With that being said, I had a good conversation with Dr. Gifford today, and one of the things that I was thinking in my head was that in regards to the students in the district and having them be part of this committee, I thought it was really important that especially at the high school, they form their own committee and not have members of the public on it, and then us, and then they will report back to us. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gifford for just a moment so she can kind of explain, and I'd like to hear the committee's thoughts on the student piece of it anyway.
Yep, sure. So along that lines, in conversation with Mr. Tebow at the high school, that's exactly his intent. Actually, we've had a conversation because it's going to be one of his SMART goals to implement one of these committees at the high school. And we made it very clear in our conversation that it would be open to all students. All students would have the opportunity to join the committee. So his intent would be to get it started, and he may have already started since our conversation a week or so ago. I don't know.
He sent out something to the students, and I
Good.
think they've already, yeah.
So he's doing that. He'll get it started, and then he's hoping to get a couple of staff members to then take it over as kind of a club, committee, and let it grow from there. So with that said, we thought then, just as you mentioned, that that committee could maybe nominate or choose a couple of students from that committee to then report back to the larger community committee. Issues they might be talking about, et cetera, what's important to them. So that's kind of the plan that we thought would work.
Just
Mrs.
one question.
Amaral?
Do you know, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know if Ross has, and I would think so, just because the emails go out to everyone, those students that are in virtual academy this year?
If they want to be
High school
involved.
students to be involved.
I don't know if, I'm almost thinking positively, I haven't seen it, but that
Yeah.
he has put it out there, because as you know, he puts that some more
I think his emails go out to
Yeah,
everyone,
exactly.
so then it would go out to those,
Exactly.
yeah.
So whether anybody's interested,
Right,
who
true.
knows, we'll see.
Right, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, he's been really good on including all of the students, so, on those communications.
Yeah.
Good point. Yep.
I don't wanna
Any of my other colleagues on the student piece, what do you think about just having them? I thought it was kind of important that, with thinking this through with some of these topics, that it's an unbiased, student-led, committee at the high school with a faculty advisor
Yeah.
overseeing it. Mrs.
Yeah.
Waite?
Yeah, I think, again, I saw the email that went out, from him, and, and I know various students who are interested and who've, asked to be on it. And I think it's, empowering for them to come together and, talk through these issues. I know it happens in debate, and they're very, And again, like not being dominated by adults, I think is, but being facilitated, I think is great. And I do think
Yeah.
that, you know, we did have 3 applicants, but I think it's even more empowering for them to choose their own representatives. And I would second that as a way to go. I think that's great, so.
Yeah, I'm good with that,
Mr.
that's
Nunes or
fine.
Dr. Jenkins? Thank you.
Yeah, so I do have some thoughts. I just want to raise a few concerns.
Sure.
To the extent, and I'm not suggesting that this is the issue at the high school, but to the extent that there may be some issues that may make some students feel uncomfortable about coming forward to participate in these efforts. So I do have concerns. There's a lot of research that shows that women, students of color are less likely to step forward when they're asked to volunteer in a way where we just send out a generic call. The research is very clear that if we want to have diverse representation and diverse views on committees like this, we have to proactively recruit. So if we're going to do this, I really do think we need to make some efforts to do some outreach to students who might not normally have a seat at the table, because these are the students that we're trying to serve through this committee. So I don't have a problem with us sort of acting this way, but I think we have to work in concert what we know to be the best practices to create an inclusive environment where people feel comfortable about speaking up. So if we go this route, then I would like to see the administration proactively recruit students of color, students who might feel that issues at the high school, so that they have a seat at the table in this discussion about the climate in our schools.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. It's some excellent points. Dr. Gifford, do you see, what are your thoughts on?
No,
Having
I'd be
that
interesting to
conversation.
see, yeah, what Mrs. Tebow had in mind, because again, it's one of his SMART goals, so it might already have been part of his action steps, but I will certainly circle back with him on that. Yeah. Chris.
Anything else, Dr. Jenkins, for that?
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you. As far as the larger committee, what is the committee's pleasure with moving forward on this? I know we spoke about it back in August. I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on how we should move forward with this. Mr. Nunes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, I had printer issues this weekend, so I finally got it straightened out this afternoon. So that's when I kind of saw all of this, so I apologize that I didn't get a chance to give you or Dr. Gifford a call. My thought on this has been and continues to be what we talked about back in August. And I think, and no disrespect to, I know this is out there and we have to, somewhere down the line, are going to have to deal with it, which is fine. But I think right now we've got a lot more things on our plate with this COVID-19 and getting all the students back into the classroom, number one. And number two, just a personal opinion, is this virus continues to, phase 2, as they're talking about, starts to escalate. And yes, they're coming out with a vaccine, but I'm not even going to get into that at the moment, because who knows when it'll finally get here and how long it takes to trickle down. I mean, I think we're in a possibility that, you know, there's issues that are going to crop up that are going to need our attention more than, with all due respect, this committee at this point in time. So, I mean, my recommendation would be, you know, to just kind of, at this point in time, sit tight. I mean, there's not much we're going to be able to do with this committee between now and after the first of the year anyway, because of the fact that, you know, you got to get everybody, how are we going to meet? You know, how are you going to get people, who's going to be the scribe, get the meetings posted? How do you make sure that it's just the person that's supposed to be on that committee, you know, at the meeting type of deal versus, you know, 5 other people sitting at that person's house or office or something of that nature. So, I mean, personally, I think what we have to do, you know, I know it's an important topic and that, and we need to look at it, but I think we need to wait until this virus settles down and we can give it our not so much full attention, but give it the attention and due diligence that it needs.
Thank you, Mr. Nunes. Anyone else? Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that I feel that we, sorry if anyone wanted to go first, Shannon or Mary, but I feel it's worth setting up. I personally don't know how we decide upon, I mean, I have my own thoughts, but I know we've decided upon the makeup of it as far as, although we've altered that with the students having their own, which is very important, and I'm sure they're very excited to start that up. But I think we should at least set this up. You know, obviously things would, I think, have to happen via Zoom in the short term, and we can work through that. But I do think this is really important to get started because, you know, the emails that we're getting certainly have this tone around the mascot and the Indian, and that is one piece of it. But there's so many other pieces to it that I don't think we can wait to start a committee to discuss things. Ms. Paveo spoke about the library and some really great things that the schools are doing, and my daughter's reading some great literature, stories that are more diverse, authors who are of different cultures, and that's wonderful because we are a community. We're a very white community, and I think that we benefit from learning about, who we are in a broader sense. You know, all of the elementary schools are coming together and working and learning more about their own personal cultures within their own schools. And we're better together, and we're in this together. I just think it's important that we set something up and then we go with it. And what that looks like, I don't know. I don't know how we pick and choose the people to be on it. But I am in support of it being constructed and, now, rather than waiting.
Thank you, Mrs. Amaral. Mrs. Waite?
Yeah, with all due respect to Mr. Nunes, I mean, I understand, certainly this is a very difficult time. I think, we did make a commitment and, ask in August, for people to start sending their letters of interest. And those people have been waiting for a while to find out if they're, part of this group. And a lot of other committees are working right now. I'm on the Charter Review Committee. In addition, we're working via Zoom, and, it seems to be functioning, pretty well, and, on some, detailed content. So I think, certainly doable. What I would like to see, and again, if things change, the members of the committee, once we identify who those people are, I think they can also come up with the timeline for themselves for meetings and what makes sense given the circumstances. But I'd like to think that we can, at the very least, come up with the goals, and the scope of what this committee's work will be. Because I think, again, like getting back to what was said before, is that, there's a component which is certainly, looking at the mascot, but that's, only a piece of the greater, work that this committee has to do. And I think it's important that we articulate that, and really get that down for ourselves. Like, what do we think that this committee should do? How long do we think this committee needs to do its work based on what their goals are? And then I think, what would be the skill sets of the persons that we want to be as part of this? And, I would imagine we want representation, for example, among the faculty from different schools and different age groups and things like that. And I think we can do that work. And then, maybe come to the table at our next meeting with taking a deeper look at the persons who might fit those standards and kind of develop a membership. And then at least those people will know before we get into the holidays if they're a part of this. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Mrs. White.
Yep.
Dr. Jenkins?
I'm strongly opposed to any effort to delay moving forward for this issue. I'll paraphrase, the old saying, justice delayed is justice denied. I think we need to move forward with discussing these issues, and I think delay is a tactic to keep things at the status quo and where they are, and that's just not sufficient. I agree with Ms. Waite that maybe identifying some qualities that we're looking for, and particularly among the faculty and the town members, to ask those people on the list already to provide us with a bit more information about their connections to the schools, what their background and training is in these areas would be useful. I would say that perhaps, in looking at the list of administrators, it's perhaps a little bit more clear to me. I think it would be good to have representation from both the high school and the middle school. Mr. Hayes is the only administrator that has put his name forward from the middle school. So I think it's, pretty clear that I think we should have him on the committee. We had said to administrators and, given that Mr. Tebow is the principal, I would be willing to support Mr. Hayes and Mr. Tebow for the 2 administrative roles. And then I'd like to maybe come back to getting some more information on who the faculty and the town members who put their names forward for serving.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. So, I honestly think we do need to move this forward. COVID's going to be around for a while. It's not going anywhere. So what I'd like to see is maybe tonight we can ask, put a message out there to the public, and then also maybe if Ms. Genther, I hate to ask you to do anything else on top of the enormous task that you're already doing here, but reach out to or just email the people that are on the list that have expressed interest to provide us with a little more information to why they want to serve on the committee. I think that would help us. I know it would help me at least, because if we're going to do this, I want to make sure it gets the time it deserves, and second, I want to make sure that it's the people that are serving on it they're a diverse bunch, and it's not one strong side or the other strong side, and it's just being very what's the word I'm looking for? I just want to make sure that we're leaving no stone unturned, and we've got all our cards on the table for this. And as far as the timeline goes, if we can come up and at least put together the committee, like you said, Mrs. Waite, before the holidays, that would be great. And then following the new year, maybe let them start working, and then we'll take it from there. Yes.
Yeah, just to reiterate, what do the people that are inclined to volunteer feel that they contribute to a committee involving diversity and inclusion and all of that, and equity? So like I would love to hear from those people what they, not, I don't want diversity, more, what can I offer to this conversation, as well as the being of a diverse group as well.
No, excellent point. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. I know some of you have said it too. This is not solely about the Dartmouth Indian. No. This is that is just one piece of this larger conversation that is long overdue, and we should be having.
And so, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, Mr. Oliver, to that point, can we talk about what we will be tasking them with, or do we want to put that onus on the group to say, like, this is what, is that coming from us to kind of set up their, there's the scope of their work, or will they kind of define that more themselves, I guess is my question. I mean, we know kind of broadly what we want them to do. Do we want to be more specific as a school committee giving, direction and guidance, or, what is the thought there? Yes.
Sure.
I'm just going to speak without really thinking through what I'm thinking much, but I'm thinking that perhaps the high school meets, and I'm sure that they all are coming to the table with ideas and thoughts that they have around what's going on. To Shannon's point, having that, targeted outreach, that one-to-one conversation around, we would like you to be part of this because we feel you would contribute in this way to those students who, in the ways that they feel comfortable with, right? We see a lot of that work in the middle school. Let the kids kind of dictate how they feel most comfortable sharing what they want. And perhaps the broader committee meets first, having on the agenda what the high school students are bringing to the table, and that might help I don't know if anyone, but that's just what came to mind. Perhaps that's a good way to start in creating that focus or that timeline, you know, whatever it is, based on what's being brought to the table. I mean, we can name things for sure, but I would be interested to hear what the students, once they've met, bring to the table.
So you're saying have the students meet first?
As an idea, it just came to me.
Okay.
And they I don't know.
Yeah, then I think what you're looking at then is, you know, you bring it into the high school and such, and, you know, the committee is not trying to reinvent the wheel. Because some of these items are maybe already out there, and then the committee can hash through them and come up with
Piggyback on
ideas.
or add to the scope of what the larger our committee is to, or the task to do. But Shannon probably has some good ideas too.
Shannon?
I didn't quite hear what Mr. Noon says. I mean, I
All I-
think that, right? Mr. Nunes, can you repeat that maybe?
No, all I said was, you know, I kind of agreed with Kathleen in the sense of, if the high school is meeting and they come together with some ideas, then the committee's not trying to reinvent the wheel because they already kind of have a little bit of a stepping stone and a starting place.
So I don't disagree with that, but what I might add is that issues of diversity and equity inclusion do not just involve the students, they involve our staff and our faculty. You know, it's about our work culture as well. So it's not just about the students, it's about and I'm not saying there's issues, but there are other people who have other perspectives on the school that might be able to see things more clearly. Staff, faculty, parents of children in school, that children themselves maybe aren't able to articulate. So for instance, someone who's the parent of someone in elementary school, you know, maybe I'll speak, Kathleen, I don't want to speak for you, but as a parent of a disabled child, right, or differently abled child, you probably had a lot of thoughts when he was in elementary school that maybe, you know, teenagers might not see or notice. So I think it's a good idea to get input from ideas from high school students, but I'm not sure that they're going to see the whole picture. So I'm not sure that I want to limit it to sort of the ideas that just they're bringing to the table.
Great point.
No, so I agree with you, Dr. Jenkins. I can understand everyone's points. I think the challenge here is that this is a very big challenge. This is that's being put in front of us. And like I said, I think it needs to happen. And we as a committee, we as a town, we as a school community should be having this conversation. So with that, any
Mr.
thought?
Chair?
Yes.
Can I make a motion?
You can do, yes, you can make a motion.
So I'm trying to help you virtually, but like move us forward through this. First, I'd like to make a motion that we solicit input from the faculty and staff sort of members and the town members who have indicated interest, that they provide us with some more information about why they want to serve, what they bring to the table, and sort of what their experience and training is around these areas, and maybe for the town members, what their connections to the school are.
Didn't you just ask Kate to do that,
Yeah.
Chris?
Yes, I had
Yeah.
asked Kate. I had asked Kate to do that, but Shannon's made a motion. So I have a motion.
Second.
Yay,
Discussion.
yes. No, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Sounds like a
right.
good idea.
Agreed with what you said there?
We
All in
agree.
favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a second motion.
Go ahead, Dr. Jenkins.
I would like to nominate Mr. Hayes and Mr. Tebow to be the two administrative representatives to the Diversity and Equity Committee.
A second.
So we have a motion by Dr. Jenkins, a second by Mrs. Waite. Any other discussion?
No.
That's fine.
I will just add to that I think those two individuals representing the high school. I'm fine with that.
In the middle school,
and the
yeah.
high school. I think they would serve the committee well.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Anything else for us?
That's it.
Okay.
I just don't want to leave the scope of their work, again, because I just think that's so important. So just to come up with a plan for how we're going to develop the scope of what this committee is going to do and really making that clear, and who's going to carry that forward. I think that's just one decision I'd like to see made before we leave tonight. Like if that's going to be something we talk about at our next meeting, or we give that over to, Mr. Hayes, Mr. Tebow, whoever, to lead that. I just think if we have that decision, it will be helpful. That's all.
Sure. I think to some extent, the discussion needs to be, start from within the group.
Yeah.
As far as what they're tasked with, I think at the end when the committee finally, is ready to present their findings, I'd like to see, and I'm not sure how the student group would interact with this piece, but ultimately I would like them presenting with the administration's help, presenting to the school committee.
No, for sure.
Yeah, at the end. But as far as, I think that's still open for discussion. Kathleen?
Yeah, I would like to see them as a group sort of meet and sort of maybe define what this diversity means and and then come up with maybe, I don't know if we set like 3 goals and like you said, I agree having them come to us with their findings and is a good idea.
Mr. Nunes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think at that point in time, I think we have to leave it to them because they're for argumentative sake, especially the administrators and the teachers, the students, they're the ones that are on the front line in this.
Yep.
So I think for them to come up with what they're looking for and maybe bring those ideas to us before they go, they want to do A, B, C, and D, and before they go off to, we go, yeah, that's a good idea, those look good on our part. Since we're going to have to probably somewhere down the line adopt that into a policy that, so before they spend a lot of time reinventing a wheel and they've just, they've put some stuff together for us as thoughts, and we've approved it so that they can go off and now hone in on it.
I think
If that makes sense.
I think I understand what you're
I
saying.
think I know.
Mrs. Waite?
Yeah, no, I mean, just to, piggyback on what he was saying, I think what, what Mr. Nunes is suggesting is that, they'll come in and present their overall agenda and their goals to us. And then we'll say, those are, that's in tandem with, we'd like to see what you come up with in that, whether it's, taking a second look at curriculum or, whatever those specific goals are. And then so we kind of are met then, and we understand the direction that they're going in. And then they have their final presentation to show us,
Here's where they ended up.
that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I saw.
Yeah, no, that's what, you look confused. So.
Are we good?
Oh, I'm
big.
good, I
It's
just
a
want to
big-
make sure
it's
you
a
seem
big- it's
confused.
big.
It is. It is.
It's bigger than all of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm pleased with that. Go ahead, Shannon.
I'd just like to offer a couple of thoughts. One, I think there's going to be a lot going on here. So to suggest that they're going to do one report, I think there's going to be maybe many issues that we tackle. So there may be several reports
Right.
coming out of this committee. I also think it might be easier if we can develop a charge without sort of naming specific issues. And so maybe it might be easier if two of us drafted a charge for the committee for our next meeting that we could review collectively. So for instance, we can charge them with meeting, reporting back to us at certain times with recommendations and all that, but I don't think we need to name specific issues in the charge.
That's good.
So did I hear you were volunteering to,
I am happy to volunteer if anyone else would like to help me with that, or if anyone else wants to do it instead of me, that's fine. I will just say, I'm going to be out sort of medically for several days next week. So I may be limited in the time that I can do this, but I will make it work if the committee and someone else, it wants me to do that and someone else is willing to help me out.
So our next meeting is December 7th. Do we have 2 meetings in December?
Yes.
Do we want to set this up for the second meeting in December, so it's not just 2 weeks from now? Would that?
I can make it happen by the 7th. If someone else is willing to help me out, we'll make that work.
Okay.
So meeting the
Mrs. Waite?
I can help, and I'm happy to have, Dr. Jenkins' expertise in, formulating this, but I'm certainly more than willing to help,
Perfect.
unless, either of you would.
No, that's perfect.
No,
Okay.
thank you.
You guys are
I
doing
am-
better at that than I
Thanks,
am.
Mary.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
great. That's
Our next
awesome.
meeting's after the 7th is the 21st.
This is the 21st, okay. Perfect. So thank you both, Dr. Jenkins, Mrs. Waite, for putting that together, and we'll look forward to reviewing it at our next meeting.
Thanks.
Next up, under new business, FY22 budget timeline. Already.
Wow.
I'll turn this over
thought
to
we just
Mr.
got out of
Kiley.
I don't know what cliches I could throw out here. Unprecedented, certainly uncertain. So, yeah, we've never probably had to be more flexible in everything we do. And I don't think the budget is going to be any different. I mean, this is a budget timeline fairly consistent with what we've done in the past. I think the town is going to be way behind, I would imagine, their normal timeline. But I don't think that we can afford to, to wait and not plan. What we have to do is be able to shift gears. And plan on multiple levels so that we can adjust accordingly. So this timeline really sort of sets the stage for that, but we have to be fluid and flexible with it. So March and April, I don't know, we'll see.
May.
We'll see if that's feasible. We have no idea where the state is going to go with this. I mean, they're still working on this year's budget, so that's a bad sign. We have indications that tax revenue in town aren't great. So between the state and the tax revenue in town, those are our 2 funding sources. So things could be bad in 22, for sure. So we need to be prepared for that. I think what I always like to start with from a budget perspective is to find out what the principals need in their buildings and the departments need to get the job done in according to the standard that we are accustomed to. So do good work, continue improving, looking at the school improvement plans, continue trying to implement improvements. We want to know that. We want to know what that's going to cost us to continue to do. So that would be sort of the foundation of the budget. Obviously, if things get really bad, then we'll have to collaborate. Our administration will collaborate district-wide and adjust accordingly if we have to. But at this point, I think we have a plan of where we're going to start.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. Thoughts, comments, questions from anyone? Mr. Nunes?
Yeah, thank you. This is, I don't envy you. I'll be honest with you, to be perfectly honest. This is not going to be fun. You're right, the state has still got theirs in committee because the House and Senate can't agree. So that's there, and they're no sooner going to get out of this one. And, December becomes January, and they've got to, they've got to start working on everything so that the governor can give us House 1 in January, and away we go. Who knows what the revenue is going to be? And again, I go back to what I said earlier with Phase 2 blowing up. We have no idea what's going to be happening. businesses keep shutting down and that type of deal. So, yeah, this is gonna have to be very fluid on our part, and also, you know, I think Town Hall is gonna have to be very fluid, because, you know, they may be getting, you know, changes at the last minute, so, but we'll get it done. We're here to help.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair,
Yes.
I've seen a lot of conversations on Twitter about the fact how many school districts are seeing sort of steep declines in this year in kids enrolled in preschool and kindergarten and early grades. And I'm concerned that the state is not planning for that this year parents may be keeping their kids back or sending them to private school. And so our budget next year is going to reflect that. But then when things return back to normal-ish, we're going to have a more normal amount of kids and a budget that doesn't help us pay for those kids. So I wonder if there's any sense, Mr. Kiley, I'm sure they're not even talking about the budget yet next year, but whether they're going to take that into account, that we may be seeing wild fluctuations sort of in enrollment in districts, that normal budgeting procedures are going to make it very difficult for us to address.
So Chapter 70 funding.
Yeah, so I can say that from the perspective of the Department of Ed finance people that I'm involved with, they understand these changes that districts are facing. And they also hope, like we do, that they're temporary in nature, and that we should have an expectation of being held relatively harmless to the dramatic fluctuation based on COVID-19. So they understand that. Whether they ultimately have the funds to implement holding people harmless sort of remains to be seen. The FY20 budget discussion, which is important because that's money coming to the town this year. So the ongoing discussion essentially holds Dartmouth from a school perspective and generally from a town perspective harmless for the impact of COVID-19. So that's a good sign. There's no decrease in Chapter 70 funding, although enrollment is down. So I think they understand that. Again, in the end, it's all going to come down to, do they have the money to fund what they would hope to fund? And I think in '22, that's when that begins to be a more challenging scenario for them than it is in '21.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. Yeah, I will, just out of curiosity, do we know from our October 1 report, the amount of students that were either transferred out homeschooled or to a private school? Do we have any idea on where we're at with that? Is it significant?
Well, we don't have the private ones yet, because that comes out January 1. But we are about 30 below on our kindergarten, and we have 70 additional homeschool kids.
You're 30 below in kindergarten.
Registrations, yeah. Normal registrations.
Okay.
Normally, we're about 340, and we're at, 2, and we're at about 210.
Okay.
And we have roughly 115 to 20 homeschool, and we're usually around 44.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
That's
I couldn't hear
I
it.
couldn't-
Yeah, we
Chris,
couldn't hear that over there. Chris, could you repeat what
So we
Dr.
have,
Brown-
normally we have about 45 homeschooled kids, and we're at
45
about
homeschooled kids.
115 right now.
Okay.
And normally we have roughly 240 kindergartners, and we're at about 210.
Two what?
210.
210. So it's about a 70 and 30, so about
About 105.
Net loss.
Well, net loss, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite considerable. So our hope is that they won't look at those numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not alone,
No.
No, of course not.
so, yeah.
I just have a
She'll
quick
say-
question.
Yes, Kathleen?
I'm gonna ask a question I'm not really prepared to really, I don't like to ask questions that I don't know what I'm asking, but there was an email that came out within the last couple of days, like the commissioners' newsletters, and this actually might have actually been from the federal government, and it said something like with the ESSER funding and things like that, states have used very little, and so I think Massachusetts has spent 12% of their ESSER funding. Is that Massachusetts holding on to it until districts apply for it and get it, or is that is that in essence potentially they're holding people harmless fund, and so they're not giving out all of what they've gotten, or can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. So the CARES Act is a fairly complex act. It includes multiple grant sources that either could go to school districts or to municipalities. So the bulk of the money in Massachusetts was directed to municipalities.
Oh.
For whatever reason. That's at the state administrative level, really at the governor's level and A&F there. So they are administering the bulk of the funds. For instance, the town of Dartmouth received approximately $3 million in eligible grant monies at the municipal level, at the town level. We received in ESSER $300,000 from a school perspective. Now that was based on the Title I formula, which doesn't particularly help us compared to some other districts. We also received the Coronavirus Relief Fund monies, which are also CARES Act monies, but distributed in a different pool. And we got $788,000 from that. So the net of the two, because Bishop Stang and Friends Academy are eligible for some funds, is about $1 million that the schools have received. We have spent, will have spent all of it. The town has been great to work with and very collaborative. They recognize that, I mean, we're the biggest operation that, in town, obviously, the most people served, the biggest share of the budget, and really the highest level of need. So they've helped support us with things like HVAC monies through their CARES Act funds, as well as technology expenditures. And Mr. Galashaw and I have been working on that, and the hope is that, we're stringing things along as best we can, but we're really, stretching. So they've been great with that. But outside of our monies, I don't know that the town has had a lot of additional expenses. They've received funds from the maybe not funds, but they've received a lot of supplies from the Mass Emergency Management Agency. So the town emergency management has worked with them and has done a great job getting lots of supplies that can also be used by us in emergency situations and back up, our stocks. So they haven't had to buy that. So I think that is the way it is in a lot of communities. So a lot of money is sitting at that municipal level that is not going to be spent. I don't think we're alone in Massachusetts, in the country, but it was distributed differently in different states. So, and there is a lot of money still to be distributed. The hope was originally that it would be able to be used for revenue replacement. That has not happened because the legislature can't get their act together. But, and that's not going to change. And this money is expiring December 30th, and there's no way they're going to get anything done before December 30th. So whether or not those monies come back again somehow, I guess remains to be seen, but it is possible. But it's not going to be revenue replacement, which would have really saved the town and all the other municipalities in the state.
So the funds that are expiring at the end of the year, they're the ESSER funds. There's some that can be carried over.
Right.
And there's some that are expired. Can you just go over
So
that?
from a school perspective, the Coronavirus Relief Fund expires on December 30th. That's the $788,000
Okay.
grant. What we've done is expended all of that on our virtual academy teachers, our virtual learning, Edgenuity, TECA, all the supplies that we've had to buy up front. Really, all of the expenses, cleaning supplies and cleaning hours and all of those things. So we will have spent it all before December 30th. And then we will have the ESSER funds remaining. Now, that's a smaller amount, and it can support some costs for the rest of the way,
Okay.
for the rest of this year.
So, with that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the TECA and the Ingenuity platforms are semester subscriptions.
Yep.
Now, you said that the money has to be expended by December 31st. So, have we taken into account those students that may continue remote? Because I believe the option was that come semester 2, that's when we would look to allow students back into hybrid. So do we have funds right now to cover Ingenuity and TECA for semester 2?
You're right. I mean, so basically, all we could do, and we did this with the virtual academy teachers as well, is look at covering the first 4 months of the year through the Coronavirus Relief Fund. It's unfortunate because it was our biggest pool of funds, but on the other hand, we also had a lot of initial expenditures. I mean, it's good that we had the money, and but yes, so we'll revert to other sources, ESSER primarily, for the remainder. And that'll go quick, because that's not a lot of, there's not a lot of money.
Do you have a ballpark figure of what TECA and Ingenuity cost us?
Yeah, 40, well, it's going to be adjusted. Edgenuity is going to be less than 40,000, and TECA is 90? 90.
Okay. For one semester.
I think Ingenuity's paid for the year.
For the year.
Yeah.
Total for the year.
Yeah.
Both
That's not
total
too
for
bad.
the year.
But
Okay.
now,
That's not too bad.
does it increase, like, depending on how many, like, let's say we have 20 more students who sign up for Ingenuity?
think it's full-
So it's one
it's full
full
coverage, I
Okay,
think.
that's great.
Right?
That's
Full
what we, I mean,
coverage. Yep.
within the scope. That's good to
Full
know.
coverage.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. Anyone
Oh,
else?
Thank you. I'm glad I asked that question. And I appreciate your thorough answer,
Yes.
because all of this is so important. I like math, but I am not, I don't even balance my checkbook. And so I can only imagine you must be pulling your hair out every single day, and you do it with a smile on your face, and
Can
you
you
just
tell?
seem so calm and composed that this has to be, I'm studying chaos theory right now. I'm going back to school myself at night in the middle of the night, but, and it just, I was like, wow, chaos theory and coronavirus. This just must be a nightmare for you. And I appreciate you and your staff and all that you're doing, and just, I just can't even imagine. And it's glad it's you and it's not me, because we'd be in a heap of mess, but thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley.
Thank you.
Next up, personnel update.
So you have 2 sheets, and Dr. Jenkins, I emailed you the 2 sheets to your Dartmouth email.
Did you get those, Shannon?
Dartmouth email.
To your Dartmouth email. Ms. Roy sent them to your Dartmouth email.
Yeah, I got it, yeah.
Yep. So the first sheet, the one that is got the yellow highlighting, is the staffing update on positions at central office and educators in each of the schools. And the second sheet, which is mostly the blue and the pink highlighting, is our teacher assistants, which is a little more complicated. So you can see in the yellow highlights, you know, as we navigate through the year, we're trying to address each issue as it arises. And in some cases, an inability to staff a position causes us to try to look internally to fill that. So as Mr. Kiley mentioned, we had virtual academy teachers that are partially funded through the coronavirus relief fund. There were 6 of them. We were able to find 5 within the pool that we searched extensively. Mrs. Oliveira did all the interviewing and reviewing and all of that. One of which we ended up staffing with a portion of a coach, ELA coach from one building and a math coach from the other that are also doing the science and the history. In the, and you can see each area has one that we may have chosen not to staff at the moment. If it's a specialist, it may be due to the fact that, you know, half of the students are in, we don't have a need, we're waiting, you know, as far as funding and all of that. We have a special ed position in one school that we were not able, it was a late resignation, we're not able to find a candidate, but we did have a specialist person that was licensed in that area and was moved into that role. And there was a position at the high school that wasn't needed because of the numbers in that particular content area. So the nurse, a new additional nursing position was posted, and we're pretty close to filling that to help cover some of the absences in the nursing pool that we're having trouble staffing on a regular basis because of, there's just no subs, whether it's substitutes for teachers or substitutes for nurses. The substitute pool is really low because a lot of the districts are trying to fill long-term sub positions. And so there aren't a lot of candidates out there for substitutes, and they're being snatched up pretty quickly. So that's the overview of the admin staffing and the educator staffing. The other sheet is my attempt to simplify the teacher assistants, which is a very much a moving target. But my summary is sort of all the way over to the right in yellow. So you can see at the bottom, overall we're down about 5.6 TAs, but within that are 3 exiting grade 12 one-to-ones, so those would have exited anyways. An in-school suspension position that we eliminated because there really wasn't a need for that. We also added 2 one-to-one TAs at Quinn. We were able to find those recently. Those are, the TA positions are difficult to find. We also have a couple openings in the regular TA positions at Quinn that we're hoping to either shift or be able to find, because the TAs are helping us with the substitute gap. So they're used to the classrooms, they're used to the technology. They're also filling when we have IEP meetings, they're covering those. So the percentages in the middle kind of tell you a story about what percent of our classrooms we have regular TAs that are able to help. And you can see Quinn is down. They are our largest school at about 575, and they have our lowest percentage of regular TAs that can help. So they also have some gaps in their special areas that we just can't send a PE teacher or a music teacher over there. We just don't have enough to navigate all of that. So we have a person between 2 like grade 1 classes, and the TA is helping the second one while the art teacher goes back and forth, or the music teacher goes between the 2 classrooms. So the TA pool is really being stretched to help us fill those IEP meetings and the absences and the need to help with some of the special areas. So I don't know if you have any questions on either one of those.
Thank you, Ms.
staffing
Roy.
updates.
Yeah, I had asked Dr. Gifford to have someone from her office put together where we're at with personnel. I thought it was important for us to be cognizant of what's going on in the district. So if I'm looking at this correctly, Ms. Roy, for the TAs, we're right now at a minus 5.6 FTEs for the TAs.
Which includes, like I said, the 3 one-to-ones that would have exited because their students were graduating.
Yep.
And the in-school suspension program that we didn't need. The middle school library TA that was also helping with the PE for the one-to-one that moved up to the high school. So there are some that we naturally would have lost, but we also added a few, so it, with one-to-ones at Quinn and components of that. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, but that's where we are, yes.
And as far as professional positions go, what are we at? Do you, all total?
As far as what?
As far as professional teaching positions and administration positions, I see.
So we had, as far as, we had 6 virtual teachers that were added and a nurse. And then we had 1 central office. We had 6 people that were currently not filled and 6 new ones that were added.
Okay,
So it's sort of a,
a wash.
Kind of a wash, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question. As I look on the DeMello school line, when you come into, after the 40%, you've got 7 of 20.
so on the DeMello TA.
I'm and I mean, and it goes down the line.
This is the way my math brain works. All right, so DeMello has 20 sections when you count up all their grades. They have 8 regular TAs. Those are the ones that help them, so they aren't assigned to students. So they can cover 40%, 8 out of 20, 40% of their
Okay.
classrooms with the TAs.
Right.
If we shift 1 to Quinn, because we're trying to decide what, that would bring them to covering 35% of their classrooms if we need them.
Okay, but just
So
above that.
Potter has 9 regular
Right.
TAs, 18
Got it.
classes, 50%. If we shift 1, they're at about 44%. And Quinn has 7 with 31 classes. That's 23% of their classes. So you can see why we're trying to look at that. If we shift 2, 1 from each of the others, we're still at 29%.
Right,
They're our largest school.
right. But if you go next to the 40%, you have 7 of 20.
Yep. If I move 1, so if I have 8 there now, and we move 1 to Quinn,
Right.
they're down to 7.
Oh, covering the classes.
Yeah.
Okay, got
We're
it.
trying to,
Nope.
we have a hard time finding TAs, and
Yep.
we try to prioritize the one-to-ones first and the programs first. And we're pretty close to filling that. We're 0.5 down on doing that.
Okay.
And then we're looking at the regular TAs.
Now I got it. Thank you.
It's kind
Yes.
of
In terms of, I'm taking the,
Thank you.
if anyone's used to kind of riding the wave, it's the Quinn TAs and trying to figure out where they need to be, just speaking with the highest need population. And if I'm reading this correct, where they're down 1, 0.5 you said, for Quinn
Quinn
TAs?
is, they have an intermittent one in one of their programs that we believe we're close to finding a candidate for.
Okay,
And then we have 2 regular TAs that are on leaves.
all right.
that
Are
haven't
those, though,
filled
I
yet.
don't, if you could speak to, like, there are the ones where we're close to, they're not one-to-one, say, they're just staff support, extra, okay.
And they're using, sometimes they're using those to help out if like on the
Sure.
intermittent one,
Yeah,
or if somebody's out.
yep. Okay.
Mrs. White?
Yes, just a point of clarification. Like when I look at the virtual academy, so in grade 4, is that currently being taught by the DeMello and Quinn coaches? And how are you, I guess my broader question is, as I look at DeMello, they've had a retiree for their math coach just retired. It sounds like a lot of the literacy coaches, the math coaches are doing a lot of filling in. Is there a plan after this year to replace that math coach for DeMello? Like how is that, how are you kind of dividing up those
So-
former responsibilities of the literacy of the math coaches now that they're covering classes and supporting staff and we have a vacancy at DeMello? Like how is that all fleshing
So
out,
the
I
math
guess?
coach recently retired in November, so that's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
recent
no, I know that,
opening.
yeah.
We have, the math is prioritizing computational fluency. I mean, Mrs. Oliveira can help, but we're not making any major shifts in the math curriculum at this point. I think it's a priority for the following year. Tracy, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
She was looking at Tracy, but Tracy's.
Oh,
I can't hear her either.
okay.
No one can hear anything.
Math coach.
Math curriculum not changing for
amplification
this
system
year.
in here.
More priority for next year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That is a top priority for next year.
Okay.
Does that answer the question that I couldn't really hear?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I had to use my mom voice.
Yeah, it was actually, it was Mary's question.
Yeah, so my question is ultimately, that vacancy will ultimately be filled. It was just a recent retiree, but is the plan ultimately to fill that position in the fall, if we, hopefully,
It depends on budget.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's-
yeah, it absolutely depends on
greatest-
budget.
yeah. Our greatest priority is to fill the classrooms and the special ed positions first, and then see where we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Jenkins, you have anything?
She's gone.
No, I'm good, thank you.
She's got a pretty swirl there.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Thank you, Ms. Roy.
It's it's complex. It's always moving.
Yeah.
Next up, I'll turn it over to Dr.
Just a couple of
Gifford
things.
for
Yeah.
superintendent's update.
Yeah, a couple of things. So obviously, we continue to meet with the Board of Health. We had a number of discussions this weekend on some positive cases that came up in the schools. But each one of them, I have to say, we met again this morning, our normal Monday morning meeting with some nurses, Board of Health, well, I say Board of Health, Chris Michaud, and working through all of those scenarios, making sure everybody's on the same page, working through contact tracing, et cetera, et cetera. We've been very fortunate. So far, we do have a couple of bigger contact tracing numbers that will be on quarantine coming up. But we continue to keep the transmission in school kind of not there, so that's a good piece, as much as who knows what will happen. But so I just wanted to make it clear too for folks that have questioned about asking about the number of quarantines, et cetera. That is such a complex number because so much of it is out of abundance of caution. It could be 10 people, it could be 5, it could be 1. So every scenario is different, and to maintain numbers per se, I mean, we might know each school what it is, but it's not a number that you continue to, I mean, people could be going home for, bad sore throat and a temperature, but have nothing to do with that. So it's ongoing, but as I said, we have a great collaboration with Chris Michaud. He's fantastic, and the town nurse, and been able to work through all of the scenarios. Athletics, you know that the MIA came out with the new guidance last Friday. I spoke with Andy today, Andy Christofouli, and as you know, the start date has been extended to December 14th. They're looking at basketball and ice hockey. So he'll be coming up with a plan of action for that. It's a little bit more complex than outdoors as we had it, so we'll see what we're thinking as that moves along and what schools. I have to say, a lot of the schools that I've spoken to, the superintendents that totally were against the fall sports are leaning towards trying to do something now. I think they saw that it went pretty successfully at a lot of districts, but some are being held back, of course, because of gym space, that they might be using the gymnasiums for classrooms, et cetera. As you know, the governor, and they keep continuing to come out with the statements about everyone get in school, and I know we get emails, et cetera, about why aren't we all in school, but I want to reiterate that we continue to still have to maintain the guidance, which is 6 feet. Our classrooms are separated that way. We cannot fit more students in our classrooms with that guidance. So unless they want to build us a new school, we have to continue using the model that we're using at this point. And that goes for the transportation as well. So as much as they say everyone in school full-time, it's two sides of your mouth, if you will, get them all in.
And to your point, Dr.
Yeah.
Gifford, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
for those, just for everyone watching, what's the probability of us returning full-time? Because obviously we've all heard those
Right.
you know, those parents or
Right.
those community members, like you just said, that we should all be back in school, all the students should be back in school. Really, what is the probability of us returning anytime soon? Just so we're all clear on this.
Next to none.
Oh.
I would say next to none. That, if I had to bet right now, I'd bet on next to none.
I don't, that's kind of my feeling too. I just wanted to
Right.
say that because I know there's a lot of people in the community,
Right.
like you said,
Yeah.
that why aren't the governor saying, the commissioner saying this? And you're absolutely right.
Yeah, we
It's-
just can't fit it.
There's absolutely no way that we
No.
can, following social
Can't.
distancing guidelines and transportation guidelines,
Can't.
that, really, transportation's a huge issue.
Huge issue.
And until they come up with updated,
Right.
for both,
Right.
updated guidance,
Right.
you know, I don't
Right.
personally see that happening.
So I guess, I
Mr. Nunes?
guess my question that I asked Mr. Kiley back in September or October, that, you know, this all of a sudden in the middle of January went away, and the 2 days that he would need to get the schools open, we don't have to worry about right now, right?
There you go. You
No,
know,
we don't.
And to that point, even with all the contact tracing, when we have a student in a cohort, Mr. Kiley's office is spending a ton of time trying to look at videos of the buses to see just how much the students adhered to the guidance. Did they take their masks off? Were they close together speaking? So trying to follow that guidance and then do contact tracing is an issue. It's a huge issue.
Mrs.
And
White?
just, you know, and I almost feel like I'm, you know, I know Dr. Jenkins, you know, brings this up, you know, and I'm, you know, maybe I'm, you know, stepping in here, but, you know, we are approaching Thanksgiving. You know, we have so many families who are, you know, want their students back in
Yeah.
full time. I mean, again, like, Thanksgiving should not be big groups. It should be your own intimate family. I mean, that's who should be, I mean, it's sad. I mean, I know, you know, personally, I haven't seen my parents in over a year. I planned to go down, had to cancel that. So you know, it's a hard decision, but if
Yeah.
we want our kids back in the schools, we have to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe and, you know, being really smart and keeping the people that we love who are older or, you know, in more fragile health, we're keeping them safe as well. But again, I think those two things, and I know, so Dr. Gifford, you know, with that in mind, I know you sent it on email, but could you clarify again, just so for everybody who's here, to hear, like, if you choose to go, you know, drive down to Florida for Thanksgiving, you know, and have a big potluck, you know, at great aunt's house, what will be, and, you know, Johnny comes back and says, like, it was a great, you know, my cousins, I had like a big wrestling contest. Like, what will happen? Like, how does that play out?
So what's the governor's guidance, I guess,
Yes.
for all the
Yes.
Dartmouth families that are in Florida or at Disney World right now?
Yes.
Yeah, they're supposed to fill out his sheet. There's a form online. And also have a test within 72 hours of returning to the state, and then produce that negative, I don't know who you're producing, you know, giving the negative results to, but if you do not have your results when you return back to Massachusetts, you're supposed to quarantine until you get those results.
And I think it's harder to get tests right now. That's what I've heard, you know,
And they
more recently.
reduced
Yeah,
the
it's a
number of
long,
lower
you've got the long
stakes
lines
too.
and there's the
Yeah, there's only
delays
2
and
good states right now.
delays in getting
Vermont and
them,
Hawaii.
That's right.
getting
And I
them
don't
back.
have a
And
trip
I don't
to
think
Hawaii.
Vermont wants us.
But
Emerald?
I just want to say, like, my interpretation from sort of following this and sort of hearing people in the community is it's frustrating to hear, certainly it's frustrating to hear the commissioner and the governor, you know, now after having districts sort of make plans to come in and say X, Y, and Z should be in person. But my interpretation in really hearing him and listening to them, and I encourage people to do this, because, anyway, is what he's saying is, and how I interpret is, we are as full as we can be for our community. We are full in person. We're going every other day. Those chose hybrid. I mean, virtual academy. That's one thing. But we're every other day. Our kids are not away from school except for quarantine, and those things are in place for more than a day. They're back with their teachers. We are, in essence, back in full capacity with
What we
following
can.
the guidance.
Right.
And so I was encouraged, and it could be out of context. I didn't watch the whole thing, but the governor did speak to this today, and he clarified that while he's saying what he's saying, to the capacity that you can go back in person, that you do it with all the safety precautions. But it's leaving it up to the local, the LEA, the
Yep.
local education authority to make those decisions because we know our buildings, we've measured them, I haven't, but Jim has, and the staff, put all this in place for the safety of the families. And to Mary's point, Thanksgiving, college kids coming home, I just implore families to really stress to their loved ones who are back in town from college not to be having birthday parties, not to be having parties at their house, not to be doing that. If you really want your students to be in person as much as you can, you really need to do what we need to do right now as a community to make sure that we don't mess up and we don't go to remote and we don't, our numbers don't go high. We've got to do our due diligence. We miss our friends, we miss our colleagues, you're away, you're back, you've got a younger sibling still in the schools. If you're back from college, please do your best to not mess this up. It's on you. I'm sorry, I'm really passionate about this, and I hope that people adhere to what they need to do to be safe, because I don't want to go back remote. Anyway.
I completely agree with you, Kathleen, and I'll just say to the families that made the decision to travel outside of Massachusetts, that's perfectly fine. We just ask that you please keep in mind
Follow the rules.
safety of all the staff, faculty, and students in the Dartmouth Public Schools, and either receive a COVID test or quarantine appropriately per the governor's orders.
Right.
That's kind of what we ask.
And so, to that point, so since we are in the model we're in, we're continuing to do what we can to enhance the remote days. So I actually met with Mr. Doan today to talk about what he's been doing at the middle school, because he had put out to the staff to provide a plan of action of how they're going to continue to enhance the connections that teachers have with students. So I was really, really pleased with the plan that all of the teachers have developed. And first of all, all students will be checking in the morning and attendance to be taken on the remote days, because we wanted to make sure we were trying to beef that up as well. All of the teachers have supplied schedules to their students for Google Meets, that they can join their Google Meets at certain times of the day when the teachers are available. They've also given times for academic support as a team. They work in teams at the middle school, of course. They're also looking and watching and teaching checking their progress on that Go Guardian, and also they're able to chat with them. So if they have questions and that kind of thing. And of course, they're monitoring work through a Q&A session that they have. And they all had schedules because, as I said, work in a team. So either they're meeting with one particular teacher or the whole team. It depends on what's going on, because they have academic support and their curriculum time. And they also are starting, which they put out on their parent letter, an active learning support online center. That's starting December 1. That's for all students, and it'll be 2 times a week, 2:30 to 4. That there'll be a link for students to be able to link in, and the teachers will be monitoring that, kind of like an office hour, if you will. So that's extra that they're starting up on December 1.
What was that called, Dr.
Active Learning Online Support Center. And that went out in a parent letter. So again, just the work that they're doing to enhance the connections and the live lessons or contact that students have on their remote days. Parent conferences are coming up December 2nd and 9th. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, which I'd like to take up at our next meeting, is, as you know, we mentioned Ms. Roy is retiring. So we have been working on some suggestions for a plan of action. I send you all some information on some thinking on that. So just to mention it tonight, that I'd like to put it on the agenda for the next meeting for discussion on how we move forward with that position.
Perfect. Fine with me.
And that's all I have.
I'm good with that.
Thank you, Dr. Gifford.
All right.
And will you be with us for the next school committee meeting?
I will.
She will.
That'll be
Oh,
good.
good.
Okay.
That'll be,
Maybe we
awesome.
can have like a cookie or something.
That's right. Dr. Jenkins,
Yes?
did you have something? Did you say something? Okay.
What's the white?
What's that,
The apple?
John?
It's just, she's all of a sudden got white tape or something, it looks like.
I don't know.
Next up, report of the chair. All I have is, I think we had a success, like you said, Dr. Gifford, a successful fall sports season. I think it went extremely well. No major problems. And like you said, I think some other districts will probably be joining in. So that's all really I have. Anyone else? No, I'd just like to take this opportunity to wish everyone out there, especially those of you in attendance tonight here in person, as well as everyone at home, our faculty and staff, families, community, a happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe.
Stay home.
That's right. Our next regularly scheduled meeting of the Dartmouth School Committee is Monday, December 7th, 6:30, right here in the Dartmouth High Media Center. At this time, Chair will.
Do we have any public
Oh,
comment?
you're so good, Mr. Nunes.
Oh, actually, I wrote it down.
Ms. Genther, did you receive any other public comment or any public comment?
I don't know because my computer died. Sorry.
What happened?
I will,
Her computer passed away.
Oh,
I hadn't,
silence for the computer.
I hadn't up until the time that it did,
Okay, that's fine.
Good enough.
Okay, so for
Fire.
the record, if you do receive anything, you'll forward those to us.
and I will also call your attention to the emails or comment on the emails that Dr. Gifford forwarded to me from several community members about the old business item on the agenda this evening.
Oh,
There were
yes, the
comments about
Equality and
those.
Diversity
They
Committee.
didn't come in to me, but Dr. Gifford forwarded them to me, and
Perfect.
She has them all.
So you have them as a matter of record.
We received
Thank
them.
you very much for everything, Kate. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next regularly scheduled meeting of the Dartmouth School Committee is Monday, December 7th. I think I said that already. At this time, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session for the purposes of, for an update with collective bargaining, not to return to open session.
Second.
So moved.
Second. Jumped in there.
We'll give the motion to Mary, the second to Mr. Nunes. On the motion, any further discussion?
Nope.
Roll call, please.
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins,
Shannon?
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral,
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes.
Mary Waite.
Yes.
Have a good night, everyone. Meeting's adjourned.